unearths a scary reality. The world is running out of water.
Finally unveiling.
Buried in the mud, they find bones.
The Jordan River is almost gone, and when the water dried up, a secret gate broke open, just like an old warning said it would. One old scroll said the Watchers, powerful beings locked away long ago, would come back when the sign started. Tune in now, because the fifth sign just showed up. The ground is leaking red, and something with 6 fingers just walked across the dust. The river is dying. The Jordan River used to roar. It used to move fast, wide, deep. It carved through the land like a blade of water, feeding crops, giving life, holding history in every ripple. This was the same river where Jesus was baptized, where prophets stood, where wars were fought and miracles happened. But something buried under the river has been found, and it changes everything we believed about this holy place. The banks are dry, the water is low, the rocks show. Fishermen shake their heads. Farmers look up at the sky. There is no rain, there is no flow. The river is shrinking more every year. And when rivers shrink, they reveal things. Secrets buried long ago. Things no one was supposed to find. One morning, a sound echoed through the valley. Not a bird, not the wind. A deep, strange rumble. Some said it came from under the earth. Others said it came from the water. It was low, like thunder in the ground. People near the river stopped, looked around, held their breath. Something was waking up. Not long after, researchers found something strange on the edge of the river. Old stone walls, broken jars, bits of bone, a carved figure partly buried in the sand. It looked like a statue, but the face wasn't human. It had wings, horns, and eyes that stared without blinking. They dug it up, slowly, carefully. And that's when they noticed something else. Under the mud, under the layers of clay and dirt, was a tunnel, a man-made shaft, cut through the rock, narrow, tight and dark. It led underground, deep, too deep to guess. Inside the tunnel, they found marks on the walls, old writing, symbols and warnings. They called in more experts, archaeologists, Bible scholars, people who had studied this land for years. When they saw the carvings, some backed away. One man crossed himself. Another just whispered, "This can't be." Because the symbols were older than anything they'd ever seen. Older than Israel. Older than Moses. These were signs of something buried, locked away and meant never to return. And the location, it matched a forgotten story from the Book of Enoch, a story most churches don't talk about anymore. In the Book of Enoch, there's a tale of angels who turned against God. They were called the Watchers. They taught men forbidden things. They sinned, and they were punished. God locked them underground, deep under rivers and mountains, to wait for the end of days. Most people think it's just a story, a warning, a myth. But now they were standing above something real, a sealed chamber under the Jordan River. Ancient, covered in salt, with strange heat rising from inside. The deeper they went, the warmer it got. And the sounds grew louder. The scientists tried to explain it. Shifting plates, air pockets, echoes. But none of that matched the pressure they felt, like the earth didn't want them there. Then something happened. One of the workers, a man named Nadir, refused to go back in. Said he saw something down there, something tall. Not a shadow, not a trick of light. A figure, watching, waiting. The team paused the dig, called in security, cameras, lights. They didn't find the figure again, but they found something else. A stone box, locked, wrapped in rusted chains, covered in symbols, warning not to open it. They opened it. Inside was a scroll, dry, fragile, written in Old Hebrew, and something else, something unknown. But one sentence was clear. It said, "When the river runs dry, the gate shall open." No one spoke. For a moment, all the buzzing, clicking and talking stopped. That sentence was in the scroll. And the Jordan River, one of the most sacred rivers on earth, was now almost dry. Was this the gate? Across the world, people started talking. Churches, mosques, synagogues. The Eastern Gate in Jerusalem is already sealed, waiting for the return of the Messiah. Everyone knows that story. But now there was talk of a second gate, a forgotten one under the river, one that held something darker. Not the return of peace, but the return of the imprisoned. The scroll warned of a shaking in the ground, of darkness rising with steam, of voices from below that speak in lies. It sounded like fantasy, like something out of a horror film. But then the earthquake hit. It was small, just a tremor, but it cracked the dry edge of the riverbank, right where the dig had begun. The tunnel split open wider, and the rumble returned. Louder this time, like something moving underground, like chains dragging. News outlets picked it up. Some laughed, called it a hoax. Others believed. They said it was the beginning, a sign, a warning, a countdown. People began to pray. In prophecy, numbers matter. Days, years, cycles. The scroll spoke of 40 days from the opening. No one knows what it means, but believers started counting, watching, waiting. Could this be tied to Revelation? To Daniel? To the last trumpet? No one could say for sure. But what's clear is this. The Jordan River is not just a river anymore, it's a message. The earth broke open. The writing warned us. But the next sign was louder and closer. What rose from the deep. After the first signs appeared near the Jordan River, cracks in the earth, strange steam and glowing symbols, there was no turning back. What once was considered legend had now become a living warning. The air near the excavation site grew hotter by the day. What started as a tunnel beneath the dried-out river had widened into something else, something far older and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. As workers returned to the site to monitor changes, they discovered that the chamber beneath the river had grown larger overnight. The walls, once dry and still, were now wet with a thick layer of moisture that dripped slowly, leaving dark trails along the stone carvings. The glowing symbols had changed. Their brightness had deepened, and some had started to move. Not in a wild way, but in slow pulses, like the heartbeat of something buried alive. One of the researchers placed his hand on the wall to test the temperature. He screamed almost instantly, pulling away with a palm red and swollen, as if pressed against fire. Yet, the wall didn't burn anything else. His skin carried no blisters. It was a pain without heat, a pain that came from something unseen. 2 days after the worker's injury, the land trembled again. Not a full earthquake, just a short, sharp shake. Then came the noise. At first it was a low hum, barely louder than wind, but it grew deeper and stronger, spreading across the valley like a rising wave. Birds scattered from trees, dogs barked wildly. Inside homes, dishes rattled and floorboards creaked. No one could find the source of the sound. It wasn't coming from speakers or machines. It came from the ground. It came from the sky. It came from everywhere at once. Then came the voice. It didn't speak words. It roared. The sound was deep and low, like a giant horn mixed with thunder. People fell to their knees. Others held their ears, crying out in fear. The roar lasted barely a minute, but left the entire region in silence afterward, as if the earth itself had stopped breathing. Moments later, a new crack split the riverbank, wider and deeper than before. The chamber expanded again. Cameras placed inside picked up a fresh image, a dark figure, tall and still, floating just above the floor. The shape had no clear features, no face, no limbs. It moved without touching the ground, then vanished into the shadows as quickly as it appeared. The scroll found near the sealed stone box days earlier was now being studied line by line. Experts confirmed that the language was ancient Hebrew, with pieces of another unknown script. One translated phrase stood out more than the others. When the voice returns and the steam glows, the gate shall begin to open. With the steam glowing in red and the voice heard across the valley, 2 warnings from the scroll had already come true. The third mentioned something even more terrifying. When the watcher stands in silence, the countdown will begin. That shadow caught on camera? It matched descriptions of the watchers, fallen beings from ancient writings who taught humans forbidden knowledge. According to the Book of Enoch, they had been punished for their rebellion, bound in chains, and buried deep beneath rivers and mountains until the day of judgment. Scholars had long called it myth. Now they weren't so sure. The air near the river became heavier, not from smoke or dust, but from something else. Visitors to the site said it felt like the land itself was watching them. One scientist fainted while trying to measure temperature changes. Another quit and refused to speak about what he had seen. Nearby villagers reported hearing whispers at night, carried on the wind. Not voices from people, but from the ground. Some said they heard prayers. Others said they heard warnings. A few heard nothing at all, but felt something staring at them from the trees. Word spread across the internet. Footage of the glowing chamber and the strange shape circulated for days before being taken down. Officials said it was fake, but the locals believed. They had seen enough. Reports of shared dreams began to rise. In different countries, people described similar visions. They stood at the edge of a dried riverbed. The sky above them turned dark. A great gate, tall and broken, opened in the ground. Something stepped through. It was not human. It had no face, no voice. But everyone in the dream knew exactly what it wanted. Freedom. These dreams weren't just found in one place. They happened to children and adults, to religious people and non-believers, to the sick and the healthy. No one could explain how they were all dreaming the same thing. Experts dismissed it, said it was stress, a trick of the mind. But that didn't stop the dreams from spreading. By the end of the week, the Jordan River was quieter than ever. The water barely moved. The surface, once full of birds, was now empty. No doves, no hawks, not even crows. Birds are known to sense danger before people. In the past, they fled before earthquakes, before fires, before storms. Now they had fled the river completely. This silence scared the locals more than anything else, more than the steam, more than the noise, because nature itself had left. Inside the tunnel, the walls continued to shift. The circle at the base of the chamber, the hole, now seemed to breathe. Light and heat came in waves, like exhaling gas from deep underground. Sensors could no longer read the bottom. Drones sent into the hole stopped working once they crossed a certain depth. The last drone sent in managed to transmit a single frame before it died. It showed a floor, smooth, black, and lined with 7 stone pillars. Each was broken at the top, like something had snapped free. That was the final image. The signal went dead. Security around the site doubled. Cameras were pulled. Roads were closed. Officials claimed the area was dangerous due to collapse risk. But people knew better. The air got hot. The shadow came and left. But something deeper waited below. The pit below. After the tunnel split wide open, the world shifted. A deep chamber was now fully exposed beneath the riverbed. Stone walls formed a perfect circle, carved with symbols that pulsed like breathing skin. At the center, there was a hole, a wide shaft dropping into blackness. Teams sent lights down, but nothing ever reached the bottom. When they dropped in a sound sensor, it picked up one strange thing. A slow, steady beat. Not water, not machines. Something that sounded alive. Heat came next, not from above, but from the pit. Warm air rose out of the opening like breath. The walls around it were wet, but not from rain or flooding. The moisture clung to the rocks like sweat. It smelled like metal and ash. And people who got too close started feeling dizzy. What happened next was worse. 2 nights later, a sound returned to the valley. At first, it was a hum, barely above a whisper. Then it grew into a roar. The noise had no clear source. It wasn't coming from the wind or the ground. It came from everywhere. People living miles away said it felt like the air itself was shaking. Windows rattled. Lights flickered. Phones lost signal. And then came the voice. It didn't speak words. It didn't shout or scream. It groaned, low and long, like thunder mixed with wind from a far-off storm. It shook walls. It knocked pictures off shelves. Animals ran. Birds scattered. Then, just as fast as it came, the sound stopped. But something had changed. The riverbank near the chamber split again, exposing more of the tunnel. The stone symbols along the walls began to glow. Faint red at first, then brighter. One glowing line stood out from the rest. It read, "When the river is dry, the gate shall open." The river was nearly gone. The gate was nearly open. Cameras caught movement inside the chamber. Not people, not animals, something else. At first it was just steam, then shadows, then a shape. Tall, thin, unclear. It didn't move like a man. It floated just above the floor, arms spread wide. Its eyes, or where eyes should be, glowed briefly before the figure vanished back into the dark. The figure didn't appear again, but the fear stayed. Scientists at the site started keeping their distance. Some refused to enter the tunnel at all. They wore full suits, masks and helmets. One man got too close to the glowing wall. His hand brushed a stone symbol and he screamed. No flame, no spark. But his skin blistered like it had touched fire. He left the site and never came back. Villagers near the river reported strange things. Not just sounds, but voices. They said the wind carried whispers. Some heard prayers. Others heard warnings. A few said the voices spoke their names. Always at night. Always near the water. Children had nightmares. All the same. They dreamed of a black gate opening in the ground. Something walked out. It had no face, no feet, just a long body that reached for the sky. What they described matched the shape from the tunnel footage. More people started visiting the river. Some came to pray, others came to protest, and a few came just to see for themselves. But most of them left quickly. They said it didn't feel right, that the air was too thick, that the land itself felt sick. North of the dig site, a small lake connected to the Jordan turned red. It didn't happen over days. It happened overnight. Locals woke up and saw it glowing in the morning light. Not brown, not muddy, blood red. Fish floated on the surface. No birds flew above it. Samples were taken. Scientists said it could be algae bloom, but the water moved strangely. It pulsed, even in still bowls. It seemed to react to heat. It steamed without boiling. One metal tool dipped into it came back burned. Then a technician named Lior took a sample home. He planned to study it on his own. He was never seen again. His house was locked, lights off, but on his workbench sat the empty vial, melted at the edges. The floor beneath it was scorched black. New images from satellites showed that the chamber beneath the river was expanding. The circle had grown wider. The symbols had shifted position. Now they formed a ring, like a clock, with 7 gaps spaced evenly around it. No one knew what the gaps meant, but the number 7 raised alarms. Revelation speaks of 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls of wrath. Some believed the gaps on the stone ring matched those warnings. And then came the 7th night after the first great sound. That night, a white light streaked across the sky. People thought it was a comet, but it stopped, hovered, split into 7 parts, then disappeared, quietly, like it had never been there. The government said it was space debris, but watchers near the river knew better. they had been counting the days, watching the gate. One of the ancient scrolls said this: "When the gate breaks open, 7 signs shall follow, 1 for each corner of the world, 1 for each path below." No one knew if this was the first sign, or the 7th, but something had begun. The ground shook again, the sky turned red, and the watchers began to move. The 5th sign. The people who studied prophecy had gone quiet. They weren't talking to the public anymore. Governments blocked off the area. They sent more guards, then even more. But nothing could stop what was already happening. It was too late. Things were moving and no one could slow them down now. Something ancient was waking up. And now the 5th sign had come. It happened early in the morning. People all across Israel, Jordan, and even parts of Syria saw it. A red light spread across the sky. It didn't come from the sun. It wasn't lightning either. It looked like straight red lines glowing like fire high above the land. Not from clouds, not from planes. Just long, bright streaks that stayed in place. The birds disappeared. Animals on farms got scared and started running around. People stopped walking and just stared at the sky. No one spoke. Some didn't even blink. For 5 minutes, the red glow stayed. Then, all at once, it shut off like someone hit a switch. The sky turned blue again, but everything felt wrong. Later that day, the ground near the Jordan River began to shake. The tremors lasted only 7 seconds, but it was enough. Something had started moving deep under the earth. In the tunnel below, strange things began to happen. Cameras that had gone dark flickered back on, without any power. One screen lit up on its own and began showing a quiet chamber. Then a shadow crossed the lens. This was not the same shape that had been seen before. It was clearer now. It looked like a tall figure, like a tower, with arms and legs that bent the wrong way. Its skin didn't look normal. It shimmered, almost like water. The face had no mouth, no eyes, just a shape full of glowing light. And from that light came a noise. But it wasn't a scream. It wasn't a soft whisper either. It was speaking. Many voices at once said the same thing. The gate is broken. The seal is removed. The watchers will rise. Then the video feed turned black. One of the old scrolls had warned about this. It said something strange. On the 5th day after the horn, the fire shall rise above the river, and the eye will open. That day was now. It had been 5 days since the loud voice echoed in the valley. The fire in the sky matched the scroll's warning, but no one understood what the eye part meant. That changed when the floor inside the chamber cracked open again. This time, the break made a round shape, like an eye. Inside it, there was no fire, but it glowed red, like it was lit from under the ground. The tools near the crack started to shake. Heat came from the hole, and machines nearby picked up strange signals. Metal objects pulled toward it. Watches stopped. Radios made no sound. Then the sound came back. And with it, voices. The voices weren't coming from speakers. They weren't coming from outside. People said they heard them inside their heads. Over the next few days, thousands of people had the same dream. They were standing where the Jordan River had dried up. In front of them stood the black chamber. It had symbols spinning around it like a wheel. A huge figure rose out of the pit, one with wings, covered in light and ashes. It pointed up to the sky. Then came the sound of a trumpet, loud and strong. The ground shook, even in the dream. People from all over the world described the same thing. Different countries, different languages, but the same vision. Some said they saw 7 others standing beside the winged figure. Others saw only one, but it spoke with many voices. Doctors said it was just a sleep problem. Religious leaders called it a prophecy. But the people who had seen the signs with their own eyes, they said it had already started. Farther south, another strange thing happened. A small pool near a broken part of the river turned red overnight. Not like before. This time, the ground itself was bleeding. The dirt, the rocks, they were all covered in thick red liquid. Small animals near the pool were found burned, but there was no fire. They were burned just from being there. A group tried to drain the pool. Their pump melted. Another team tried to take a soil sample, but their boots stuck to the ground. The area was closed off. Experts called it toxic, but no one had ever seen poison like this. And again, the symbols from the chamber matched what was happening. One of the carvings showed a pool of blood spreading from under a gate. Now people started asking questions. How many more signs were coming? And when would these watchers rise? Then the guards saw something they couldn't believe. Huge footprints appeared along the riverbank. No one saw who made them. No one heard a thing. But there they were, clear in the dry earth. Each print was 3 feet long, deep and wide like nothing human. There were no tracks from cars, no signs of people sneaking in. But the prints started at the cracked chamber and went toward the valley. At the edge of the trail they stopped. Right beside a stone wall something else was found, a handprint in the dirt. But it wasn't normal. It had 6 fingers. The scrolls warned about this too. The first to rise would have hands not like ours. Hands with 6 fingers. Feet like beasts. The next morning, a soldier who was guarding the area disappeared. They found his gear, but they never found him. The voices came back. The gate broke. Now the world had to decide. The river's final secret. Just after midnight, the wind changed across the valley. It wasn't cold or hot. It just felt sharp, like it was slicing through the air itself. The trees didn't move. The grass didn't bend. But people felt it deep inside their skin. It was like rough sandpaper slowly sliding across bone. They couldn't explain it, but they knew something had changed. Then came the sound. It wasn't like the noise from before. This one was clearer and it felt higher, almost like a song with no words. It had a rhythm, slow and steady, like a beat that got louder and stronger with time. As the sound grew, the whole valley began to shake. Cameras at the dig site captured the moment when the earth cracked open again. A new split in the ground, wide enough to drive across, ripped open right next to the chamber. From inside that crack, a white light rose. It wasn't blinding, it wasn't burning, it was clean and bright, almost pure. And out of that light came a voice. It wasn't yelling or angry, it spoke just one word. Choose. All over the world, people stopped what they were doing. Some sat up straight in their beds. Others paused mid-sentence or stood frozen at work. No matter where they were, they felt it at the same time. It was like something touched their minds. And they all heard the same message. Choose the gate or choose the flame. Most people had no idea what that meant. But there were some, people who had been watching the signs, who had seen the strange footage, who had read the old scrolls. They understood. The watchers were no longer locked away. They were free now. And they didn't just want freedom, they wanted to take charge. They wanted to lead. But not everyone agreed they should. Near the broken chamber, a 6th scroll was found. It was covered in ash and hidden under a shattered stone pillar. The words were written in Hebrew, but backward, like a mirror image. When the words were finally translated, they spoke of one last prophecy. Those who choose the gate shall walk in power, but their hearts will fail. Those who choose the flame shall suffer, but stand in the light. One path leads to the rise, the other to the fall. This message wasn't just another warning. It was a real choice, but it wasn't about living or dying. It was about giving up or fighting back, and people were now forced to decide. As the final sunrise of the signs came over the land, something strange happened again. The dry bed of the Jordan River revealed a new surprise. Where the water used to run, the stones were now glowing with a soft light. Someone, or something, had placed them there on purpose. The stones formed a giant shape in the dust. It was a broken circle with 7 dots in the middle. Helicopters flew above, snapping photos. Experts studied the pictures. they compared the shape to an old carving found in Petra long ago. It was a match. The symbol was known as the Seal of Enoch. People believed it was made to trap fallen angels on earth. But this seal wasn't complete anymore. The centre had split wide open. The watchers were no longer trapped. Then people began to disappear. It didn't happen all at once. It started slow. One person here, another there. But every time, it was the same kind of person. They had visited the dig site. They had touched the glowing stones. They had heard the voice. Some of them left behind short notes saying they had seen the other side. Others didn't leave anything at all. Their homes stayed quiet. Their doors were locked. Their beds were still made, just like they left for the day but never came back. A security camera near one of the checkpoints caught something chilling. A man stood still, staring into the dark woods. Then another figure appeared. It stepped out of the trees, tall, smooth and glowing, with a pale light. The man and the glowing figure stood facing each other for exactly 7 seconds. Then both vanished. No flash, no sound, just empty space where they once were. In the last days of the signs, 7 fires began to burn across the land. Each one started near a different ancient city: Jericho, Petra, Ammon, Damascus, Hebron, Bethlehem, and Jerusalem. These fires burned in perfect circles. There was no smoke, no wood or gas to feed them, just pure flame. People tried to put the fires out. They poured water on them. They threw sand. Nothing worked. Then, just as quickly as they came, the flames vanished. In the ashes, a mark was left behind at every site. The mark looked like a wing, but broken in the middle. Something was trying to send a message. These events weren't normal. They were signs, warnings, clues from something that wasn't from here, something beyond this world. As people grew more afraid and news stations stopped reporting, one last message came through. A metal plate was found inside the dig chamber. No one had seen it before. No one knew how it got there. But the message written on it was clear. The gate was opened by man, but the return belongs to the King. Believers across the world took it as a sign that Christ was coming back. Many had heard the old prophecy that he would return through the eastern gate in Jerusalem. But now they began to wonder, what if this was the real gate? A gate of spirits, a gate of judgment, a gate of final truth. Could this be the place where heaven would open? Could this be the path that Christ would walk again? No one had answers, but many could feel the moment was close. The Jordan River remains dry today. The dig chamber has been sealed by the army, but strange things keep happening. Lights move through the sky at night. Dark shapes walk near the dry riverbed. Whispers come and go with the wind. People don't see the watchers, but they know they are near. The world hasn't ended, but something has changed. Something old has come back. Something holy has been disturbed. And now every eye turns to the valley where the river once flowed. Has humanity uncovered something it was never meant to find? Smash that like button. Drop your theories in the comments and subscribe for more ancient truths still buried in shadow.